The wind changed the morning after Andy Walton was taken away. It still moved across Redemption Gap, still brushed the fences and bent the grass, but it no longer screamed like it had something to confess. The town woke slow and uneasy. Some doors stayed shut. Some eyes wouldn't meet. Shame hung heavier than the dust. Relief, too. The kind that made people breathe deeper and hate themselves for waiting so long to do it. Reporters came, asked their questions, took their pictures, then left when the story stopped bleeding. What remained was quieter, harder. A town forced to sit with what it had allowed. Jim Osborne felt the weight of it in his pockets. Reward money. Handshakes. Words like hero tossed at him by people who had crossed the street from him a week earlier. None of it fit. At night, he sat in his truck and listened to the wind, wondering if redemption was something you earned or something you chose not to run from. He could have left, bought land somewhere green, started over clean. Instead, he bought the broken mechanic shop behind the gas station, the one with oil stains soaked so deep into the concrete they'd never come out. He hung a crooked sign and left the doors open. The first horse arrived before the paint dried, a thin gelding with eyes that flinched at shadows. Then another, and another. Broken ones, afraid ones, animals that stood like they expected the world to hurt them again. Jim moved slow, spoke softer than the wind. His hands learned patience the hard way. People helped without announcing it. A bale of hay left overnight. Nails on the counter. Mavis bringing coffee that stayed hot longer than it should have. Healing didn't arrive loud. It arrived careful. The mare was moved on a quiet afternoon, loaded into a padded trailer bound for wide pastures and open sky. Jim rested his forehead against her neck and felt peace without pain for the first time in years. Tornado's memory no longer crushed him. It stood beside him, steady. When the trailer disappeared, the wind passed through Redemption Gap again. It carried dust. It carried birdsong. It carried rest. And for the first time, the town was known not for what it buried, but for what it finally let go. When the truth finally landed, it didn't crash. It settled. Like dust after a long collapse, it coated everything in Redemption Gap and made the air hard to breathe. Andy Walton was gone, but his shadow stayed. Businesses stalled. Paychecks vanished. Men stood in the street with nowhere to go and nowhere to look but down. Sheriff Brody sat through town meetings with his hat in his hands, listening to the quiet anger scrape across the room. No one yelled. That was worse. Silence can accuse louder than words ever could. Jim Osborne sat in the back, same as always. The man who dragged the truth into daylight. The man who didn't belong. Eyes followed him, not with hatred, not with gratitude, but with the uneasy weight of knowing he had done what they hadn't. During the day, Jim fixed engines. At night, he fixed fences, bent metal, broken hinges. The small, honest work no one applauds. Then the horses started coming. They arrived after dark. A trailer with no plates. A halter left hanging on the gate. A mare with ribs like fingers pressed against skin. Former Walton men never knocked. They just left what they couldn't hide anymore. Guilt doesn't speak, it delivers. Mavis Riley became the hinge the town turned on. Coffee cups. Quiet conversations. Names passed carefully, like fragile glass. She never asked why. She only asked what was needed. Feed. Hands. Time. The old barn came down on a gray morning. No machines. Just people. Hammers rang slow and steady, each strike echoing across Blackwater Creek like a confession finally spoken. Boards fell. Rusted iron clattered to the ground. When the last wall gave way, no one cheered. They stood there breathing, together. Redemption Gap wasn't forgiven. Forgiveness was too clean a word. It was changed. Scarred. Honest. Jim watched from the edge as the wind moved through the open land where secrets once rotted. Someone handed him a rope. He took it without ceremony. No speeches. No ownership. Belonging didn't arrive as a reward. It arrived as work shared in silence. Some nights, survival feels heavier than loss. Jim learned that after the mare was gone and the noise faded, when the world returned to normal, but his chest did not. Fame brushed past him like a stranger. Handshakes, articles, voices saying his name as if it meant something solid. It didn't. Purpose felt thin, fragile, like ice over deep water. Sleep brought the flood back. The roar, the pull, Tornado's eyes in the dark, trusting him right up until the moment he let go. Jim woke with his hands clenched, the sheets twisted like rope. In the daylight, the rescue yard stood quiet, empty of the mare's pale shape. Her absence was louder than any scream Redemption Gap had ever carried. So Jim made rules. Not for control, but for mercy. No chains. No locked doors. No work done in shadow. He took the iron ring from the old barn and set it into the gate of the rescue, welding it there with careful hands. Iron, once used to hold suffering, now stood as a promise. Nothing enters here to be owned. The horses came slow. A colt that refused touch. A mare who flinched at breath. Jim showed others how to stand still, how to wait, how to listen. Let them choose, he said. It wasn't instruction. It was confession. Each horse that lowered its head, each step taken without fear, stitched something shut inside him. One evening, he drove out to Blackwater Creek alone. The barn was gone. Just open land, pale grass, and sky stretched thin by distance. The wind moved through it, steady and clean. Jim stood where chains once cut into flesh and listened. No crying, no pleading, just motion, just life moving forward without asking permission. He pressed his palm into the dirt and felt the cold. Scars, he realized, don't vanish. They point the way. They remind you where not to return. Jim rose and turned back toward the road, carrying iron in his memory and patience in his hands. Redemption wasn't a moment. It was a practice,